Hey, welcome to another episode of Hey, let's build a street rod. That'd be a great idea. Yeah, sure. And then you end up with a car stuck in the middle of your bay. Anyways, yeah, another episode on the street rod here. So I'm just working on plugging some holes in the back of the body. And the wife did some welding for me earlier because I've been having trouble with the flashing causing problems for me, which is why I don't do much industrial welding anymore, but wasn't feeling real great earlier, so had her do some of the welding for me. So we made some pretty decent progress on this, but I was just cleaning up some stuff and trying to heat shrink some of my steel. I've got a lot more heat shrinking to do. You can see I've got a divot in this side panel here, which is pretty easy to see there, and I've got some waving going on here, so I'll have to get a torch out and do some heat shrinking on that. But of course, because we're welders professionally, I will do small patches and pieces rather than trying to shape one big piece. So that's all about what your preference is when you start building these things. If you're a good welder, or if you don't mind laying out long beads, sometimes it's easier to do small pieces. Like I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, there we've got more heat shrinking that has to happen on that side. And we've got our other valence plates in here. But as I had mentioned in one of my other videos, I think in my street rod, one of my exhaust pipes, in my Volkswagen street rod, excuse me, one of my exhaust pipes is like 32 pieces and the other one's like 17 in order to get around the transfer case. I think I mentioned that in one of the other videos, but that's one of the things about being a professional welder is that I don't care. I'll cut something into 30 pieces and weld it back together if it's what I need to do to make it fit. Whereas somebody else, they'll use their pipe bender and their geometry and everything else and try to bend and kink as they need to get around stuff, because that's what they're good at, is using a pipe bender. So I always try to stay within your skills. Obviously, if I'm doing welding for a living, I don't mind laying out 40 pounds of weld on something if that's what I need to do, but I'm not much of a, well, I shouldn't say I'm not much of a tin worker, because I do pretty decent tin work as well. But I don't mind laying out some weld if that'll save me some time hammering out a piece to make it fit, or having to cut a piece 3 times because I screwed something up by a 1/4 inch. I'll just jump the gap and fill the piece and put some more weld in. Obviously, I've got to do some dressing on these welds if these are going to be exposed, because we're dealing with tin foil here. So, of course, industrial welders playing with tin foil, you're going to have some burn through and some over penetration and stuff, but that'll all buff out in the end. Anyways, like I say, we're starting to make some heavy progress. These wings that you see here are the supports for our inner fenders that are going to house our dualies, and we're starting to get our wheelhouses built. So we've got the tin foil in place for that, and I just got to do the over crown and then cut this wheel opening. You can see my mark here for my propper. So that's a little trick for you. Never cut direct to dimension. I always cut inside and then grind back, or even 040 that little bit rather than 040ing direct to your dimension. Because in this case, like I had said in one of my earlier videos, I used a Sawzall to open that up, and you can see the kinking and waving in there. Now that's not going to matter much because I'm going to be welding that to my inner fender and then doing some mud work to blend that, and then my outer fenders are going to go over the top of that anyways. So that little bit of waving on that first 1/2 inch isn't going to matter because it's going to be under my fiberglass decorative fenders. But if I had cut that direct to dimension, there's a good chance I'd have gaps I'd have to fill there, whereas by grinding it back to my line, I'll be able to get a very tight fit. And while waiting with that until I have my fenders to fit into that and my perches for those fenders, I can make sure that I've got a real nice tight fit, which means I can run a much colder weld, which means I get much less heat deflection in my metal, especially since I took most of the structure out of the car. I want to limit that welding as much as I can, so I'll probably do a 1-inch stitch every 4 to 6 inches and then heat shrink that and cool it, and then weld another inch and heat shrink that and cool it in order to keep it from moving these quarters too much more than I need to. While I'm going to be rebuilding the quarters completely with new steel and that, it's better to keep the original shape as long as I can. Otherwise, I've got to go back and try to rebuild that or refit the back window or something goofy like that. And you don't want to be messing with that if you don't have to. Just keep it cool and keep everything aligned as long as you can. But anyways, in reference to, I believe in one of my earlier videos, I was talking about the angle on your upper links and how that affects the lift or push of the car. That if you want it to squat when you hammer it, you put the links at a downward angle, and if you want it to lift the back of the car, you put them at an upward angle. Well, you'll see I put 4 holes in my structure so that I can change that pitch as I want to. So right now the axle is sitting about 2 inches higher than it would when this is sitting on the ground with 8 inches of ground clearance. So I've got it set true neutral so that that link would be sitting level when the car is sitting level. But I can shift that linkage up or down as I need to. And this is something that's really important, especially if you're building a car with the intent of racing it or doing quarter mile or anything else like that. Being able to adjust your rear suspension is really important to maintaining control and getting it to move the weight where you want to. In this case, this thing is not intended for top speed or anything, and I'm probably only going to have a 400 or 500 horse Cadillac engine in it. But if I ever did decide to throw 2 superchargers on it and push that thing to 1100 horse, I've got it set up so I can change the rear pitch and change how it puts the weight to the ground. And that also probably will come in handy when I'm pulling a trailer, to be able to shift that weight and change how the rear axle responds to pulling the weight or putting torque to the ground. Because this car is probably going to weigh close to 7,000 pounds by the time I'm done. And so being able to change how, when I trounce on it and get the torque to the ground, or when I'm pulling a 15,000 pound trailer and I have to trounce on it going through the Catskill Mountains or something, I may need to change that pitch in order for the weight distribution to change properly. So doing that when I'm building the car, making it so that I can make those changes along the way, is a lot easier than going back and having to refit the car. But anyways, there you go. There's your lesson in rear suspension, if it's any use to you. Yeah, there's my inside of the wheel well and the inside of that wing, and vice versa. So like I say, I'm just starting to plug holes on the car and seal up the body to the frame, and then we'll be building the boat tail once we get the wheel wells in place. And it's making progress. At some point I'll have to put a trunk floor in here over the axle too, and all of that, but one step at a time. But yeah, when you look at this thing with these wings sticking out from the side of the car, you think they're ridiculous, but once you actually set the fiberglass fenders over it, they're actually the proper width. So if you need to see what a boat tail looks like, because you have no clue what I'm talking about, just you can Google on YouTube the Auburn boat tail and 35 or 36, and that's about what the back of this thing is going to look like, kind of, sort of. Obviously, it's my own interpretation of it, but that'll give you some idea what this thing is going to look like when it grows up. But obviously, using a Firebird for the center, it ain't going to be exactly like that. But anyways, I'm rambling because it is 1:30 in the morning and I am overly tired and blah blah blah. But thank you for watching. Make sure to like and share, all that happy stuff. But this is our progress on our street rod, because yeah, this seemed like a really good idea at the time. And I stress, at the time. Nah, I'm having fun. Hopefully you're having fun. Thanks for watching.